Are you struggling to come up with original content week in and week out? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients, let them talk about what they care about most, and never run out of content ideas again. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm your host for today's episode, Logan Lyles, Director of Partnerships here at Sweetfish Media. I'm joined today by Todd Unger. He is the Chief Experience Officer at the American Medical Association. Todd, how's it going today, man?
It is going great. Hello from Chicago.
I love it. Todd, thank you so much for being on the show today. We're going to be talking about transforming your B2B marketing through both digital and physical experiences. Before we get into that, I would love for you to share a little bit about your background with listeners and a little bit about what you're doing leading the team at the AMA these days.
That's great. I am a 20-year veteran of digital media, having worked at a variety of different media companies, starting my digital career at AOL back in the late 90s, and then moving on to a variety of other media companies like Lifetime Television and Time Inc., and then spent a bunch of time in startup world, mostly in the gaming arena. And then right before I came here, I was at the not very closely related Daily Racing Form as the Chief Digital Officer and CMO of that venerable brand in horse racing media.
Wow. I was just going to say quite the varied background from AOL to horse racing now to leading a team at the AMA.
Yeah, it's been an interesting trajectory. And I have to say the big turning point working for the Racing Forum was my first e-commerce business. It was on the digital side, a digital subscription business, and we ran a betting platform. So that whole underpinning of acquiring and retaining customers and using content marketing, it's remarkably similar to the types of stuff that I do here. And I recognized that when the AMA opportunity first came about. It's a chance to do the things that I'm really good at, but on a much larger platform and with a big impact on society.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Well, Todd, let's jump right in. I know you have some things you wanted to share on this idea of creating experiences and using that in a B2B marketing context. You mentioned this idea before of a productive disruptor. Can you define that for us and tell us a little bit about how that's played into your marketing journey?
Yeah, sure. It's a term that was invented by the folks at Russell Reynolds to describe kind of I would call like a new breed of digital leader in terms of kind of boldness and ability to execute and bring on board an organization into transformation, as opposed to being kind of more than just a highfalutin visionary in digital. It's a person who can really enroll the rest of an organization and make quick progress. And as soon as I read about that term, I thought that is a thing to aspire to. And I'll use that as a framework for how I approach things. And that is really, I think, in some regard, what they really needed here at the AMA was a person to come in and do some disruption, but also respect the legacy that this brand and this mission-oriented organization has and all of the different players that are involved, and not totally rock that world and upset everything in that apple cart. So that's been the balance, is kind of pushing forward very aggressively, but at the same time working within the traditions of a very mission-oriented organization.
Mm-hmm. So to take on that transformation, you've got to disrupt a bit, but you want to remain productive. So that's probably where that balance comes in that you're actually, like you said, not rocking the apple cart too much. And one of those things that I think probably comes into play is finding people of a similar mindset and bringing them together. Am I right?
It is totally. I mean, it's an interesting thing that when I arrived here less than 2 years ago, the first thing I noticed, there's there was no digital publishing team in place. So, whereas I've come out of a media background, and immediately when I look at a website or an operation like this, you recognize it's a content organization. When there's no formal structure in place, what do? You reach out to people and identify those other, what I call fellow productive disruptors that are across the organization, kind of pitch my vision to them. And like, you can see when someone bites on that and says, oh my God, that is what I've been looking to do. Let's work together and create this informal network across an organization and kind of get your co-conspirators in a certain way to kind of line up and help you pull it off. And so I recognize some of those people, are on my own team. Some of them are like very, close colleagues that I just, started a close strategic relationship with, and then just went around the organization and recruiting folks into my initiative. The nice thing about right now is like, in large part, we're well beyond like when I first started, which is, hey, do we need a digital transformation or not? We're so far beyond that now. What people really want is the how. And so what I've found here is if you can lay out a vision of where we want to go with this, that people are ready to enroll and they're super eager to figure out how to get it done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you actually kind of hit on my next question there, Todd, is, when you're working in an organization that comes from or is still in a more traditional marketing and advertising era themselves, even though, the world is maybe ahead there, how do you sell that vision? And it sounds like it's not just about, hey, here's where we need to go. We need to become a media company. We need to leverage more digital channels. It's about showing them the path to get there and how they can get there as opposed to the why, because that why is probably already there. They've just been looking for someone who can help them implement the how. Is that kind of how you saw it play out within the organization that you're leading now?
Yeah, it really did happen a lot like that. I'm really surprised when I look back at the beginning when I started here, because I had a chance, basically after a week to, pitch my vision to the kind of all the marketers across the AMA. And so I pulled that together about what I thought, based on 1 week of observation, would be a roadmap. And what's remarkable is that the kind of 6 things that I laid out in that presentation really did provide the roadmap for what we've done over the past 18 months. So a lot of that is just the experience at recognizing some of the quick wins. And then some of it is kind of just, more deeply, like, how is this digital platform going to be essential to what this organization can do? And from then, the nice thing about an organization like the AMA and about physicians in general is they are very data driven folks. They are looking for evidence based to move forward. And so a lot of what I did in that beginning is speak their language. Because if you go in and you say, hey, we need to be a media company, that is confusing to people sometimes. But you can go in and say, listen, here's a test we ran and it shows, how to track this person through a digital marketing funnel. This is what I mean when I say that. And you can see, if we do this, 40% more people, come out the other end as members. And you start to build kind of this set of quick wins around data and show people how you can grow very rapidly at minimal expense and unleash kind of the curiosity of an organization around improvements like this in the digital world. That's what gets people excited. And then I think then you layer on maybe more complexity in terms of the story. But that's the approach I've used here.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. As you were laying out those 6 things for your team internally, we probably don't have time to break out your whole presentation there, Todd, but what were some of the things that you put forth there to your team in, hey, here's where we can go? You mentioned knowing your audience internally, and so you're speaking their data-driven language. But curious, as for other marketers who are maybe part of a more traditional or larger organization that could be taking advantage of more modern strategies in their digital marketing, or maybe they're at a progressive company, but they have a vision for kind of the next wave that they could take advantage of, whether that's, starting a podcast and we've never done that, or changing the way that they do content marketing or something like that. Any other advice you would give to folks in kind of bringing people along in that journey and some of the things that were effective for you in presenting internally to your colleagues to get that buy-in?
Well, I will tell you, it's really great always to focus on some quick wins. especially when you're a new person like that. There's a funny story. When I first started here, I read this document that said it was taking 48 days to send out a promotional email. And I was like, I didn't even know that was, possible. But when you get in and you look at an organization that's not necessarily been built from the ground up to be digital marketers, and you took a close look at what that process was, you can quickly realize that's not going to work. I mean, we need to be, news comes out, you need to be ready to respond in an hour with an email. So part of that was just making some hard calls about the process in which that was going to be done. And we brought that down to 8 days and then to 1 day within about 2 months. There's a lot of frustration around that process, and people really appreciate the chance that someone is able to step in and has the authority to make that change and make that call. And then subsequent with that is to kind of look and say, listen, I can recognize right away the templates we're using for email, they weren't built to convert. They were built, with other kind of marketing requirements on top. And so I just rolled up my sleeve and sat with the designer, and we built out new templates and we tested them. And I showed them, like, this is not about, I don't know, whether it's going to be the right thing or not, but I certainly know how to test it. And, what that operation did was not only start people down this path of kind of creativity and innovation, but it really did unleash just the whole kind of test and learn and iteration movement that has just caught fire here.
Yeah.
So that was, incredible, kind of lighting a fire under people's curiosity and to see that you can really get a lot done very quickly. The other thing, it's interesting because I've worked in so many different digital businesses, but my early start was in consumer products marketing and advertising. I worked for Procter & Gamble. I worked for Leo Burnett here in Chicago. And the one thing I know is that it always starts with the target audience. And I think the temptation in digital businesses, it's very much product first, and don't spend enough time thinking through segmentation. And one of the things I quickly realized here was, like, the segmentation that we were using, which was driving all of the marketing, really wasn't predictive of membership at all. And it really underlined, I thought, was the issue around experience, because we weren't really interacting with people around the things that they cared about. And we took a very deep dive into that and completely rebooted our segmentation. And I would say that's been the most pivotal experience here for people, is because once you have a behavioral identified segmentation that you can program to, everything else falls in place.
Yeah.
So that's been a bit of a revolution here, and it's really changed the trajectory of everything, including product and programming.
All right, today's growth story revolves around search engine marketing, and we'll be shining the spotlight on Aegis Software, a company that makes software for manufacturing operations. Aegis was one of the first companies in their space to invest in search marketing, but as competition grew, their performance plateaued. To counter this, they hired Directive Consulting, the B2B search marketing agency. With unparalleled experience in inbound lead gen for B2B companies, Directive was able to increase Aegis's monthly online leads by 457%, while at the same time lowering their cost per lead by 147%. Now, I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
So I can imagine as you start to get more buy-in and kind of change the direction of the marketing within your organization, that, ongoing sharing how you're reaching those goals and those ongoing metrics beyond those quick wins become a very important part of sustaining that momentum. Am I right, Todd?
It absolutely is. I mean, nothing sells like success. And people are very, very fascinated by the digital world. And it's new to a lot of folks here. And they love seeing the learning and the progress. And so I'm really careful and enthusiastic about telling everyone about the wins and about the learning along the way, to show them that you can make mistakes. The key thing is about learning and iterating very quickly toward the answer. And I think that mentality has been incredibly energizing to this organization, to see, like, just the kind of low cost of trying something new in the digital world.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Any other advice you would give to marketers who are in a similar situation where they're trying to move an organization through maybe digital transformation 1.0 or maybe 2.0? Any other lessons learned that you think for marketers in a similar space, either taking on a new role or trying to push for a new initiative within their organization, that you think would be good for folks to hear?
I think that the terminology of digital transformation itself is can be somewhat scary, and it's like too big a job to take on by itself. And so I would recommend to anyone to break that down into a bunch of different components and look for places where you can generate wins.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put that together, you can create a story that people are willing to invest much more time and energy into once you can demonstrate like the impact on growth. Because ultimately, people are looking for others in the organization that can generate growth. That's what it's all about. And I think as marketing itself evolves into growth generators, that you're looking for people who can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Todd, this has been a great conversation. I love your varied background and how that's really informed your journey as a marketer and the lessons that you share today. If anybody listening to this, Todd, would like to reach out or stay connected with you, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
I think I'm very active on LinkedIn, and you can find me there and reach out to me. My contact information is there. Or feel free to use I have my personal email address, Todd Unger, @gmail.com.
I love it. Well, Todd, thanks again for being a guest on the show. Really enjoyed the conversation, man.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time? Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. You know, all those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership model. We produce a podcast for your agency. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. Everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.